Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Tim Cyclesman Wood, editor of Cycles News and Views on cyclesman.com. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Jim, as always, thanks for having me.
Tim, we know cycles, of course, are the biggest part of how you do markets, but we also know there's other cycles. For example, there's a 40-year weather cycle that determines whether we're going to have really cold and nasty winters, how dry it will be sometimes, how wet it will be, and how that can affect things like food supplies and their prices. What about other cycles that you keep an eye on?
Well, I don't necessarily watch any other cycles, but in my cycle study, there was this wonderful foundation. It's called I can't remember exactly what the name was. I don't think they're in existence anymore, at least not to the extent they were, but it was called the Foundation for the Study of Cycles. And Walter Bressert was at one time a board member, possibly the president. I think Bob Prechter was, and a number of other technicians have been involved with that. I think Martin Armstrong was involved with that one time. And they had all kinds of cycles, material and books on everything under the sun, literally including the sun. And, there's cycles with sunspot activity and cycles with obviously the climate. Sometimes winter is colder and runs longer, and sometimes it doesn't. And the seasons, sometimes they come early, sometimes they don't. And the population of rats everything. The cycle of night and day is a cycle in and of itself. Your heartbeat, everything, pretty much in life is a cycle. And some cycles can contract and expand. They're more fluid. The migration of the geese, let's say, they're not you can't set your clock by it, but in general sense, within a few weeks, it's going to be the same pattern every year. So yes, everything is a cycle, including the stock market.
And how have those, cycles played out so far this year?
Well, everything is extended. There's no question it is. The cycles themselves, they're still there. You still see the shorter and intermediate term ebb and flow. The longer term cycles are very, very, very extended and have been. This is the longest extension of a cycle since the inception of the averages in 1896. Does it negate the cycle? No. It has morphed into, like I said, a bubble, and I think, like I said, not to make excuses, I hate for it to even sound that way, but we all know that, the efforts to keep things afloat have extended the cycles and created the bubble in commodities and housing back in 2005, 6, and 7, and this time it's appeared in equities. Like I said, I don't mean for that to sound like an excuse, because it certainly isn't. It's just a fact. The longer-term cycles have been extended. But Mother Nature will have its way, and, we'll get the setup, and the price will be paid, and the bubble will pop. That I guarantee.
And yet, I guess because this extended cycle has lasted so long, 8 years plus, do we have young traders, investors, other people thinking, well, this will be different than other cycles? It seems to be self-perpetuating and climbing. Nothing can stop it.
Everybody always thinks that this time is different, and it never is. Yes, there's always a twist to it. It was different in 2000. It was different in 2007. The commodity bubble, remember the peak oil? Now, that was different as well. But the cycle, even though actually that cycle did not extend up. That cycle was perfect. It was stretched. It was a parabolic move, but it fell within some statistics that were, I mean, absolutely perfect. And I called that top to the week on the air with my friend John Grant, and I think it was Jim Puplava as well. So, yes, you can see abnormalities, and if an abnormality exists long enough, here's another one. Oil. Do you realize that in 2001, oil was under $20 a barrel? I'm looking at it. In November of 2001, oil was at $16 a barrel, $16.70 a barrel. 7 years later, it was well over 100, had been over 100, and people were calling for $200 oil. So, and it didn't really go parabolic until began in late 2006, early 2007. And in that short period of time, I say short period of time, through 2007 and into, to be exact, July of 2008, 18 months, let's call it, people accepted that as a new norm. And, you know, it wasn't. It was one hell of an abnormality. And what happened? The cycle set up. We got the exact setup with the CRB to cap it, and it come tumbling down. And in a matter of months, crude oil was in the 30s, $32. So the point is that yes, you can see extended moves. You can see things that may look like a new norm, but it's not a new norm. The cycle will ebb and flow. It will contract and expand. And, we're seeing something similar to in equities as we saw in crude oil in 2008. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that everybody's buying into it. They think it's a new norm, and I assure you that it's not.
We'll have more with Tim Cyclesman Wood right after this.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
I'm Bill McWilliam, President of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Tim Cyclesman Wood. Tim, oil for the first time since March 10th has topped $50 a barrel. Now, is this a blip, or are we going to still see a continuing downward trend this spring?
I think that this is another counter trend move. I think commodities in general, we saw intermediate term cycle tops in crude oil, the CRB. In January, we saw an intermediate term top in gold in February. And we were looking for an intermediate term cycle top in equities, which I think is in place. There may be one more push there, but we're close. And so what I'm saying is, I talked about how everything had kind of moved together to a very similar cyclical rhythm. Doesn't mean it all tops on the same day or anything like that, but it's very similar. And so this quarter, what we have seen is, like I said, we saw crude oil, CRB, gold, and now equities rolling over out of intermediate degree tops. And now with crude oil and gold and everything, the commodity complex leading, they're also leading in the sense that they made short-term lows. And so what I think we've seen is some short-term counter-trend bounces. When I say counter-trend, they should be counter-trend to those higher degree declines out of those intermediate degree tops. And so until I see some sort of a structural change to tell me that this is an intermediate degree bounce, we've had a more substantial bottom, I think that it's a counter trend advance within the context of those intermediate degree tops that were made, a month or so ago. and that there's another trip back down across the board, including gold. I'm sticking to that now because, once you see a setup, you have to assume that that setup is still in place until you see structure to tell you that it isn't. And I don't see anything yet to tell me that it isn't. So that's where I'm at.
In other words, gold could be a good short-term buy?
I think gold is actually at a top here. I think it's actually, done its decline and counter-trend bounce, and that it's near or at, probably at its short-term top and should be headed back lower.
We'll have more with Tim Cyclesman Wood right after this.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Tim Cyclesman Wood. Tim, some people are wondering where we are compared to other cycles, and you mentioned, well, are we in a position where it's 1926 or 1929? Most people just think of the roaring 20s, but they were the setup for the dismal 30s, were they not?
They were. And, I mentioned that to you when I got off the air last time. And an observation, something that I see coming, I've talked about how cycles and technical setups, they're junctures, they're intersections. They're like going literally to the crossroads, and you can go straight, or you can turn right, or you can turn left. But something it has the potential to happen. And I see a crossroads coming in equities, commodities, and virtually every asset class. And remember, I've said that pretty much everything is ebbing and flowing to a very similar cyclical rhythm. If you take charts and you just simply overlay them, you can see that. The bounces and declines or the advances and declines are not to the same degree, but the rhythm is very similar in many, many asset classes. I mean, even if you look at something, nobody thinks about the Russian stock market. But if you look at the Russian stock market or stock indexes, they're very similar. And so everything is kind of ebbing and flowing together. And that's good and that's bad. It cuts both ways. That said, there are some cyclical junctures ahead of us that is either going to allow this, if the hurdles are cleared, it's going to allow us, or I say us, the markets, the pretty much all asset classes, to expand even further, for the crazy to get crazier. In other words, we're in 1926, 27, and we're going up. Or, if the hurdles are not cleared, then I think it's going to be a brick wall. It's going to literally be a death sentence across the board, and it's going to end up being, a setup akin to 1929. I don't know which way the mop is going to flop on that. It's something I'm watching, and we'll just have to see. But one of the last times that we saw a similar cyclical setup in the CRB, which is the Commodity Research Bureau Index basket of commodities, it capped the 2008 advance in crude oil when it went parabolic and everybody was thinking that it was going to $200 a barrel. We're about to cross that same hurdle here in equities and pretty much every asset class, commodities, crude oil, all of it. So does it clear the hurdle? I don't know. I'm just the referee. We'll see.
What kind of signs are you looking for?
I don't want to talk about specifics, but it's about the structure of the market. I can say that. It's about the structure of the market. The cyclical structure is what I'm looking at.
So while we're waiting for this setup, what should I be doing with my investments?
You're safe now, I guess. It's kind of like knowing there's a minefield ahead, but you're not in the minefield. So until you step off in it, I guess you're okay. And the other thing is that the Dow theory, if this setup occurs, then we're going to see it confirmed with the Dow theory, primary bearish trend change, and probably a non-confirmation and be a number of things that will fall into place. And what I've been telling people, as frustrating as this market has been and the fact that it has gone parabolic, the bottom line is until we get another Dow theory primary bearish trend change, there's really nothing telling us that it can't stretch further. Now, that doesn't mean it can't top before we get that, but we will not have, any kind of solid indication that the top has been seen until we get that. And let me say that another way. There has never been, since 1896, the inception of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, there's never been a 4-year cycle top in history ever. This is a 100%er that hasn't occurred in conjunction with a with a Dow theory primary bearish trend change. So it's a certainty, a guarantee that I can give that we will see a primary bearish trend change when the 4-year cycle top is in. Now, I don't know if that's going to be this year, next year, or another extended cycle that's 5 years from now. But these hurdles that I'm talking about will give us some indication, some clues.
Well, when you say cycles have never been extended this long, we've never had this kind of interference before. For example, the Bank of Japan, with the way that they're buying up stocks, they'll own more than 50% of the biggest companies in Japan.
I know, and that's what I was saying. That's exactly right. And the same sort of thing is going on in the U.S. and everywhere else. I mean, why is it that everything is moving to the same cyclical rhythm? That's the point. And on the one hand, that I don't want that to sound like an excuse, because it's not. I mean, hell, it's just reality. But it doesn't negate the cycles. I mean, I've said this before. We had the monkey business going on with the extended cycle into 2007. And ultimately, did it work? No, they created the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And name me any other extended, manipulated, whatever you want to call it, cycle advance in history that didn't implode. There's not a single one anyone can point to. Tulip Mania, 29. Name one. The sugar bubble. I mean, we talked about that one before. I think sugar prices was up like 6,000% in the early 70s. They were stealing it off of the shelves, and I read articles about it where, instead of people going to people's house for dinner and bringing wine, they'd bring a bag of sugar and stuff. I mean, it was nuts. Yeah, look into it, read it. Was that sustainable? No. And neither is this. And the danger is that every time you get into that situation, when you read about these bubbles, people, they rationalize them away and they accept them as a new norm. And it's not a new norm. And I don't know, anybody who knows anything about the market, they've seen this, they've warned about it, they talked about it, and the market just stretches on. Okay, fine. It's stretched on, but it hasn't changed the fact that it's a bubble. It hasn't negated the fact that the cycles are still there, and it hasn't negated the fact that, the inevitable is going to happen. Now, until we get another setup, it has the green light to continue. That's what I'm saying. And we will get the setup, and part of that will include a Dow theory primary bearish trend change ultimately, and we have some other hurdles along the way, statistical, like I said, I guess the best way to describe it is those statistical and structural hurdles along the way to keep things positive, or not if those hurdles aren't cleared.
Tim, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Tim Cyclesman Wood, editor of Cycles News and Views, which you can find online at cyclesman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. You can forward any questions for the show to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.